Hey, good morning, guys. So I woke up this morning, I was about to brew coffee, and realized I am about to go through this bag of Sumatra from Oddly Correct. I've been enjoying it so much recently, guys. And what I really wanted to do was have a brew video talking about how I've been brewing it, what it tastes like, highlight the producer, just show some beautiful South Pacific coffee that I've really been enjoying. So, I've got my notes. So many things I want to talk about with this coffee. I've got my water, scales ready to go, and let's get to brewing. So I brewed this wonderful Sumatran Oddly Correct coffee with two different brewers. One is the Pulsar dripper, and the other one is the Sworks Bottomless brewer. So with this Oddly Correct coffee, it's from the Putra Gayo mill. The roaster is Oddly Correct. And then the producer is Iwannitosa Putra. I've never heard of this producer before, but he actually owns both the processing, the mill, and the farm as well that this coffee's from. The farm is a 200 hectare farm with around 275,000 trees. Many of which are actually covered by shade of other crops like banana trees and so on. So the producer, Iwannitosa, specializes in both washed and natural processed coffees. He doesn't go towards the wet hold processed coffees, which are so common in Sumatra. So this leads to often a higher cup quality. I've tasted some really beautiful wet hold coffees recently that have just exceeded my expectations over the years. But this coffee is absolutely stunning. It's a natural process. It consists of 4 different varieties, most of which are common, very common in the Sumatra area. Those varieties are Atang, Borbor, Catamore, and Timor. So the roaster, Oddly Correct, is out of Kansas City, Missouri. They roast on a machine called a Proaster. Now, some of my absolute all-time favorite coffees, all-time favorite roasters, have all actually roasted on this machine. I believe it's a machine made in the Philippines or Japan. I'm not entirely sure, but the roasters that do roast on this machine, I believe still currently are Wes and Gopi from Myanmar and Pine Coffee Supply. Here in the US. I've had absolutely incredible coffees from these roasters. I believe Oddly Correct is using a Proaster, but regardless, I've been extremely happy with this coffee and I can't wait to try more from them. Okay, so I have the 2 different cups right here. The left one is tasting very clean, kind of lacking like the overall flavor intensity that I expect to get from this coffee, actually. You have really nice, round, yellow fruits. It's sweet, but there's still not a lot going on in this cup. But this coffee right here in this brew, it just tastes like the sweetness is turned up. Everything's turned up about this coffee. It's more of like a brown sugar sweetness as opposed to like a lighter, vibrant cane sugar. You get a lot more of the boozy white wine, still a pretty clean white wine, but you get more of that kind of flavor and more of the fruit too. So I would definitely prefer this one. It has a little bit of a kick kind of on the back end. It kind of coats your palate in a really nice way, and then it kind of has a little bit of a sharpness to it. Whereas this one, it just kind of rolls down your tongue. So to me, I would really imagine that this one in the brew method, it's probably the Sworks. Yeah, it's the Sworks dripper. So I think what I would do next time, I wouldn't grind finer because I've had absolutely fantastic cups out of the Sworks brewer on the same grind size, same method, same everything. But what I would do next time is agitate with the WDT more. So when I bloom, I pour 66 grams. So essentially I do a 22 gram coffee, 366 grams of water. And then I'll bloom with about 66 grams, sometimes a little bit less, on the brewer about 3 or 4 notches open. And right when I see the first few droplets, you know, you want the slurry to draw down. You don't want it completely closed. I think it just kind of kicks up everything and it allows the filter to clog easier. That's just been my experience and some ideas that I have that I'm not entirely certain about. But I like it a little bit open, and the first few drops, when they come out, I'll close it. And then what I'll do is I'll try to have a lot of water inside of the brewer so I can WDT it and essentially remove the top layer, the layer of coffee, and just really agitate it, so then it draws back down below the water bed. But because it's such a thick coffee bed, I really like that because it filters out all sorts of insolubles and oils, and it doesn't channel nearly as easily as using less coffee. But the downside to that is the bed will never go below the water. It'll still kind of like dry out essentially. And after about a minute, 50 seconds to a minute, I'll again open it up to about 4 notches. And then right when I do that, I'll begin pouring my next pour. So I think one, that there wasn't enough water inside of the brewer to, when I agitate it, to really interact with a lot of the coffee. I think I let too many droplets go into the decanter right below it. And then I also think that it was such a fast brew. So this coffee being on a drum roaster, usually when you have drum roasted coffees, they're more soluble coffees, they're faster flowing coffees as opposed to a lowering. So what you can do is essentially when I open up the brewer post bloom, I think I could open it about 3 notches instead of 4, and then pour, and then it'll pour all the way up to the top. So I'll pour in 100 gram increments, right? So 66 gram bloom, I'll pour to 166 grams of water, and then typically after I'm done pouring that, I'll then open the brewer up, the Pulsar or the S-Works brewer up about 3 more notches to then flow faster. And then I go faster, faster, faster throughout the brew process after every pour. But this coffee flowed very, very, very fast already. And I actually had to hold back from opening it up on the second to the last and the last pour because it was flowing too fast. So I think I can dial it back about 1 notch and then open it up every consecutive notch to then slow down the brewing process initially, the flow rate process, and in return possibly get more water to contact time to then get more extraction. I think that could really help out with this brew, because I've had fantastic experiences with this many, many, many times with this brewer. But going to the Pulsar brewer, this is an absolutely fantastic cup. I am so excited. that I just got such a beautiful cup out of the Pulsar. No surprise here. The secret to the Pulsar that I've found over the past few months is to WDT your bloom. So because the Pulsar doesn't allow for agitation, you can remove the dispersion screens and pour directly, but you're going to clog the filter paper and it'll be just a big mess. So what you can do is WDT your bloom to act as the kettle agitation, but in reality you're just skimming the top layer of coffee grounds floating on top, and then all the grounds below it aren't really interacting as much with that agitation, and they're not clogging the filter nearly as much as if you were to have a constant water stream hit the coffee, hit the paper, and start to really clog that filter paper with fines and finer particles. So I'm thrilled at this Pulsar brew. How I brewed this was 20 grams of coffee to 333 milliliters of water. I did a 66 gram bloom for a minute. Same thing here. And I'll leave the Pulsar slightly open again, thinking about filter clogging. If it was fully closed, what that would do when I pour water in is it would kick everything up, and then it would allow the finer particles to then fall down first, right? But if the filter was slightly open and it allowed water to come through, I think it would then force down some other particles, saving the surface area of your paper for the really fine particles, and it would allow more particles to kind of come to the bottom and then create a buffer system for fines to not clog your filter paper. Again, I don't know how accurate that is. It's just a belief of mine, but that's what I'll do. So I'll see the first few droplets come out, then I'll quickly close it, very quickly close the Pulsar so it's completely closed, nothing's flowing, and then I'll WDT pretty aggressively on the top layer. I don't want to get too much on the bottom layer because I don't want to really disturb all the coffees. They're kind of saving the paper filter from clogging, possibly. But then what I'll do is after a minute, I'll open it up slightly, not very much at all. So I think fully open is like this, and I'm just opening it up like this, right? So not very much at all, and then fully closes all the way, horizontal. So what I'll do there is I'll pour to 155 grams for the first pour, and then I'll agitate it north, south, east, west, get a flat bed after every single pour, and then I'll come back once the water is like slightly above the brew bed. I'll come back sometimes when it's a little bit more. I don't have the perfect recipe for this to determine when the next pour is, but I essentially just don't want the water bed to get too high. So I'll typically wait probably, I don't know, like 40 seconds to a minute, something like that. And then I'll pour the next pour to 245, do the same thing, wait it out, and then I'll try to pour the next pour to about 242 is what I did on this one. A little bit higher than what I normally pour. Typically I'd stick to 333 to maintain the same ratio as this brew, but now I have a 17.1 ratio as opposed to a 16.5, 16.4, something like that. So a little bit more, but that's okay. My total brew time for this brew was 5 minutes, 16 seconds. Normally, I'd usually go between around around this time is actually really good, but typically around 5 to 7 minutes. It can taste great longer. It can sometimes taste great shorter, but that's really highly dependent on your coffee and how open the flow valve is. With this coffee, because it being from a drum roaster and a more fermented, natural processed coffee, it's going to be more brittle. The coffee is going to flow a lot faster as opposed to using a loring for most styles of roasting, as opposed to being a really dense washed coffee, right? So it's already going to flow a little bit faster, so a faster brew time is pretty much to be expected. But yeah, the grind size that I used, 13.4 in an EK, that's around 830 microns. I used it with Titus Brewers, a lot of Titus modded parts for very low fines. But yeah, out of this cup, It's just absolutely fantastic sweetness, fantastic acidity. It's juicy. I'm just really getting a lot of great flavors. Now that it's cool, let's try it one more time and see what we think. Yeah, the Sworks Brewer, it's really clean, it's juicy, it's a little bit muddled in terms of clarity. There's just like not much going on. But it is like a nice texture. But whereas this brew, it turns it up quite a few notches. It's just like intense white wine, really nice sweetness, darker sweetness. Obviously, if I measured TDS, this would probably be a lot higher. This one needs a little bit of help, surprisingly. But all in all, I think this is a great summary of this beautiful coffee. I've been absolutely amazed by this coffee. Even enjoying it just a couple of days off roast, it was already performing super well. That's just a really great compliment to traditional drum roasters and how they open up very quickly. A few days off roast. This was roasted on November 4th. It's the 26th today, so 22 days off roast right now. It's tasting as beautiful as ever. Just what a wonderful coffee. Natural process Sumatran, 4 varieties, 1 farm. Just a very, very, very enjoyable coffee. If you guys want this, again, this is the Putra Gayo mill from Oddly Correct. I'd highly suggest checking out the producer. Again, the producer's name, and I'll list it down below too, but the producer's name is Iwannitosa Putra. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, what a absolutely stunning coffee, absolutely stunning roaster, an absolutely stunning brew method too. I hope that you guys can try this at home and be inspired by brewing coffee in different ways and comparing, contrasting, blind tasting your coffees. So cheers, guys.